When all-in traveled to Miami last year, this city floods a lot, even when it's not raining. And that's due in part to sea level rise and the fact the city is built largely on porous limestone, which allows water to come up through the ground and onto the streets. Perhaps nowhere in the city is more vulnerable to hurricanes than Miami Beach, which sits on a sliver of land across the Biscayne Bay from the mainland. The city has seen absolutely explosive growth over a century. The image on the left shows just how sparsely Miami Beach was populated back when it was first built. Compared that to today, when luxury hotels and high-rises are packed tightly together up and down the beach. I'm joined now by the mayor of Miami Beach, Philip Levine, as well as former Miami Herald reporter Mark Caputo, who's now with Politico and who's covered numerous hurricanes here in Florida. We still have some folks who are here in South Beach this evening.
Absolutely.
A lot of people with their phones out sort of getting a last look. When you look at a map and when you look at, we've talked before about the susceptibility of this place to flooding, it looks like this could be rather bad for South Beach.
No question about it. This is a very severe, it's a very strong hurricane. That's why we've been telling all our residents to vacate Miami Beach. We are a barrier island. We are low-lying. We are very concerned about a tidal surge as well as the strong winds. And whether it hits us directly, this thing's a monster. It will cover all of Florida and definitely all of South Florida.
You know, you've been through a number of hurricanes. You've covered them as a reporter, and you covered Katrina as well in Louisiana. You know, this sort of psychology of whether to stay or to go is a complicated one. I think people who are outside are watching this and saying, like, why is anyone staying? Why is anyone staying? People have pets, they have homes, or in a lot of cases, people don't have money, or they weren't able to get gas, or they don't have cars. There's a lot of reasons that people do end up staying.
And what was really weird about Irma is that normally you have a good idea of like, oh, it's going to go in the south, I can go to the north. It's going to go east, I can go west. And here, Irma's path was always essentially right up the state's center. So we're essentially, Florida is basically one big disaster cone right now. And folks knew that and kind of were paralyzed as to which direction to go.
Now, you're from Key West, is that right?
I am.
So the warnings of Key West from the National Hurricane Center sound well-nigh apocalyptic. You have family there right now, is that right?
My mother and stepdad are staying right now, and I hope they're watching this, and I hope they don't, because I've asked them to evacuate.
And they live there?
They live there, and one of the projected paths has this hurricane going right through Marathon, which is where the 7-mile bridge is. If this is a Category 5 storm, and if it does hit the 7-mile bridge, I just wonder if that bridge can handle it.
Yeah. What is the biggest risk here? I mean, I imagine the building codes here are rather strong. They're probably ruthlessly enforced, I would imagine, thankfully. Is it storm surge? Is that the thing that sort of most concerns you in terms of damage or loss of life?
It's really a combination of two things. Storm surge is a big concern, and of course, the wind damage is a tremendous concern. But making sure our residents have left. You know, we only have another hour or two to go, and then the window's kind of closing for them to get on our buses and go to a shelter in the mainland. You know, I went and visited homeless folks today. I went and saw some seniors. And for example, I met a lady by the name of Anna, 92 years old, in a senior center. And I said to her, you need to go, you need to go. And she said, Mayor, I'm not going. I want to stay here. I have my water. I can't go. I pleaded with her. She wouldn't go. I said, Anna, here's my cell phone number. Call me if you have a problem. And she turned to me, Chris, and she said, Alcalde, which means mayor. She said, here's my cell phone number. You call me if you have a problem. That's what we're dealing with.
Well, and I see, you know, there is a AP alert that I think the city of Miami proper had sort of used kind of emergency powers for mandatory sheltering of homeless folks essentially against their will, right? Do you have enough room and safe space for anyone that does need shelter who wasn't able to get out to go to?
Well, in all our shelters around all of Miami-Dade County, there is room, and they're opening up more shelters. But what's going to happen is at a certain point, as these winds pick up and the hurricane begins, our first responders are not going to be out there. There'll be no public service available because we can't endanger their lives during this storm.
Do you think about, you know, Florida is entirely constructed through a series of amazing engineering feats, from what they did in the swamps and the Everglades to what has been done right here to the islands that were dredged out of the water just a few miles over there. That it has a future in the era that we're entering.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we're surrounded by water, and as you referenced before, water comes up out of the earth when the tides really come in. And with sea level rise, whether you want to admit global warming is happening or not, Miami Beach shows that the seas are rising. And it just seems like at a certain point, the real estate market here just might have to give. especially if our well fields, our water well fields where we get our fresh water from, are poisoned. The mayor and I have had a number of debates about whether we're
well,
doomed
right.
or
I mean,
not.
you have been an advocate for adaptation to the fact that, and we should be clear, sea level rise is caused primarily by climate change, although not exclusively.
Sure.
That you can adapt here, and this is a place that was almost leveled right after it sort of first boomed, right? I think it was 26. The hurricane took out much of it, and it came back.
No question. Miami Beach has a history of resilience. For example, what we've been doing is raising our roads, putting in pumps. And areas that used to be underwater during what we call sunny day flooding are dry. We're going to do this to our entire city. We're spending $500 million to do it. You know, people say to me, well, what happens in 50 years? And I'll say, I believe in human innovation. The same way you're having a satellite direct feed on this show, you couldn't imagine it 50 years ago. You won't imagine what they'll do 20, 30, 50 years from today to make cities resilient. I really believe it.
Mark,
I'm pretty fatalist about it. It's just difficult to see how if the oceans wind up in our living rooms, how this society that we've constructed currently can handle that sort of pressure and stress.
You've got 7 million people here. One of the things that is interesting to me is that it really does seem, at an operational level, like lessons have been learned from previous, and I'm crossing my fingers here, right, because we're going to find out, and I don't want to jinx it, but that some lessons have been learned operationally about how to deal with disasters. Andrew really was a disaster in a lot of ways, logistically, right, organizationally. Are you confident that everything is in place from the state, local, federal level?
No question about it. I can tell you from a Miami Beach perspective, one of the most important things we have done is immediately begin communicating with our residents and visitors. Communication was key. Doing all the preventive things we needed to do, making sure that if they needed sandbags, we gave them free sandbags. Pruning all the trees, making sure that all the construction sites were shut down, putting in portable generators, portable pumps. But once again, you can't hold back a massive storm like this. We're doing the best we can, and I believe it will be able to withstand.
All right, Mayor Phil Levine, Mark Caputo.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, Mark Caputo's parents, if you're watching, let's give it a thought, all right? Thanks for taking time. Be safe.
You.
Thank you.